All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Russian collusion and Donald Trump, all right? So, as you know, starting in the 1980s, Donald Trump really wanted to have Trump Tower in Moscow. And back then in the 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s, what have you, he was actually building these buildings. He was in construction, if you will, right? But then after, the housing market collapsed, and I don't know if it was before that too, but pretty much after the housing market collapsed, he just started licensing his name for money. Because again, you have to remember that he did go broke after the housing crisis. Like just as like we all got screwed, he did too. And you have to remember he owned a lot of real estate, so he took a massive hit. So anyway, he's kind of recovered. He's arguably laundering money for the Russians by this time, etc. And then he buys the Miss Universe and he takes the Miss Universe pageant to Moscow. And this is like a huge win for Russia. I mean, the PR is fan freaking tastic, and they're trying to rehab their image for Americans because, again, this happens in 2013, and you have to remember that Russia wanted to be in the TPP that Obama had already been negotiating, from 2012. So Russia needed to be seen in a better light by Americans because, Russia wants to be in the TPP. Russia also said that they wanted to be in NATO, etc. So they're trying to soften their image. So big win for Russia. And again, this is in 2013, and he's not planning on building Trump Tower. He is now teamed up with a music mogul in Russia, and the music mogul is going to secure all the funding, going to secure the site, is going to build the tower, the 800 condo apartment building, if you will, is what they had planned on building. And then they were going to give Donald Trump $17 million to just slap his name on it. But then 2014 happened. So, and what happened there? Well, you had the Ukrainians saying that they wanted to leave the Commonwealth of Independent States and look towards NATO. And then you had the president of Ukraine just to say, I don't care what everybody wants, we're not going to leave Russia. And so then the Ukrainians decided to protest because, again, they wanted to leave the Commonwealth of Independent States and start looking at joining NATO. So they end up ousting the Putin puppet that was in Russia. And so while they're doing that, the Russians decide to attack Crimea. Now, of course, they're totally lying and say it's not them, that it's, someone else, whatever. But we all know that the little green men were from Russia and that obviously Russia was lying. So President Obama then puts sanctions on a lot of the oligarchs in Russia, and that greatly affects their economy. When the oligarchs are now, they don't have money or what have you, it starts hitting the economy. And then Russia makes another huge mistake, and they take down a plane, a commercial plane like the MH317, I want to say. I can't remember, but you can look it up. So they shoot down a plane. And again, Russia denies that it's them. They're like, we didn't do it. And the entire world's like, yeah, you did. There's an investigation. It's found that, yeah, they did. But meanwhile, President Obama puts more sanctions onto Russia. And this time he hits their energy sector. That's when they told Rex Tillerson that he had until October 10th to clean up everything out of Russia and get it out of there because they were not allowing any deep water drilling in Russia. That was what the sanctions were against. So because of that, Russia went from thinking that they were going to be this really rich nation with like trillions of dollars in oil to sell in the Kara Sea to now they can't even drill the oil, and their entire economy starts to collapse. Like I said, real estate drops by like 30%. And so now, because of sanctions, there's no reason to build this luxury high tower of 800 condos because there's no one to buy them because no one can afford it because Russia's brokety broke. And so then in a 2017 interview, Donald Trump actually talks about this, and he talks about the fact that it's really hard to do business in Russia because of sanctions. Now, this goes along with like the whole talk about the TPP and the Belt and Road trade agreements that I have been talking about since I got on this app. The TPP would have allowed for sanctions. So again, Donald Trump wouldn't be able to have Trump Tower Moscow because the TPP allowed for sanctions. But China's Belt and Road said sanctions are illegal. You can't get in the business of another country. So if Russia wants to attack Crimea, or if Russia wants to take Ukraine, that's Russia's business, and you're not allowed to sanction them. And that is what the Belt and Road said. So of course, Donald Trump ripped up the TPP on day one and has started pushing people towards China's Belt and Road. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's alienating us, getting rid of all of our trade agreements in order to have the trade agreement with China, because you can't have a trade agreement with the West and have a trade agreement with China, because China allows for things like bribery and slavery. Well, if you want to do business with the West, you can't participate in bribery or slavery, even if it's legal in the country that you're doing the bribery and slavery. Doesn't matter. If you want to do business in the West, it has to be on the up and up. You can't do corrupt shit in other nations. Anyway, just wanted to go ahead and clear that up. Make sure that you check the playlist if you're interested in all this stuff about Crimea and Russia and Donald Trump.